Hi everyone, today I'm gonna to talk about the open source software. This software I think is very helpful and useful. So right now let me tell you my stories. This is my overview. I will tell you about the definition, several tabs, difference among the software, some functions, reasons why people use this, and a lot of benefits for the users. And I also add the value features. So firstly, let me tell you about the definition one. In my mind, I think the open source is like the people can modify and share the data because its design is publicly accessible. At first, the people can use the creating computer programs, but now it has the very broader values. Like lots of people can use that one. It's like everyone can use this one, and it's freely to get the code. So there are several tabs like the open source projects, open source products, open source collaborative participation, the transparency, and the community-oriented development. If the program is the open source, its code is freely available to its users. Its users can be anyone else who have the ability to take this source code, modify it, and distribute their own versions of the programs. When people want to use the open source, they need to have the license. So in the next slides, I will tell you what's the license. But the whole process is very short, which can save lots of time. So you maybe want to ask, what's the open source? I will give you the lots of examples. You can see this picture. When I saw this picture, I saw, well, it's a little bit weird. So I just see very clearly. And I saw this mark represents the open source. And when I see very clearly, I saw it's mixed up with the several people, maybe the million or the billions people. You can see lots of people build up the open source marks, which means like everyone can use that one. Everyone can share their own ideas, can share their maybe thoughts, and also share their intelligence. They can communicate on the computer. Everyone can inspect, can modify, and can enhance. So I think this is the kind of way for the people to communicate with each other. So that's very, very helpful, I think. The most computer users don't ever say. They don't need to ask for the permission. They can just go online and maybe make their own code. But they can also make correct the mistakes that the original authors make. So I think this is a very big platform for the people to use, copy, correct, and benefit for themselves, which will be very efficient for people to use that. I asked one of my computer science major's friends, and he's a student. He tells me lots of about that. He says because the computer science course is very difficult and hard to maybe make the code, and he tells me they need to design games with the complex code. And he spent a whole day to think about the code because his games can't play because maybe the code is wrong. But when I tell him like what's the open source, he just said, oh, he knows like the open source is like lots of people sharing, and he told me he always find lots of like codes on that and also shares his own codes. So he just show me like go online and just download the like license with the Macs or the Googles, and then you can just open it, and then you can just find maybe the types of, because it's the computer science major and the games. So he just find the games in the computer science categories, and then he just find what he wants, the code one. And he told me that code is very useful for him to build the games, the computer games. So I think this open source is very, very, very helpful for the like some students. It's a kind of programmers, but like for me, the non-programmers also can use that one. Like I can know more knowledge, and for my OPM course, I need a lot of code to make, and not for me, I'm not very familiar with the code, so I can just go online to go through that one and know each of course, so that which can benefit myself. And there are several tabs for the open source. GitHub is the web-based version control and the collaboration platform for the software development. And Microsoft, which is the biggest single contributor to the GitHub, he invested the 7.5 billion in June to the GitHubs. So GitHubs have like lots of money to build their own networks, to expand their own data market, to own their data platforms, to maybe make it more perfect. And the GitHub also used for the like business model. Lots of business elite will use this one because it can help to maybe design the products, and then can save a lot of time to produce the new products. So it can be more faster, and it can facilitate the social coding, like the social networking, and also receive the update projects. So GitHub is like serious social networking set for the software developers. Members can follow each other's, read each other's work, and receive updates for the specific projects, and communicate publicly or privately, they think. And I found very interesting about this slogan. I think when I first saw this slogan, I think that's very cute. And the body, this one I think it looks like the octopus, but the head is the cat head. So I want to know what's it meaning. And it has a very funny stories. Like by that time, the founders had acquired the image of the cat-headed octopus from its creator, the graphic designer who named the Simon Oxley, to use it for the mascot logo. The character's name was the octopus, which is the OCTOPUSS. So it's different from the octopus, but they have the different spellings. GitHub renamed it to the like Octcot and registered the mascot and the new name. So the logo is the outline of the front profile of the cat with the tail inside a circle. So this one just the cute one, the cartoon one. The really true one is the like tail inside the circle, and to play with the contrast, they made the cat white and black background. Yeah, so that's the very interesting stories I found. And some features of the GitHub, like GitHub Guest, allows the GitHub users to share the piece of code or other notes. And the GitHub follows the lightweight branch-based workflow for regular updates development. And the GitHub Pages is like the static web pages to host a project, pulling the information directly from an individuals or organizations. And the GitHub Desktop enables users to access the GitHub from Windows or Mac. Like what I give the examples, you can just download the open source with the license through the Windows or the Macs, rather than going to GitHub websites. And the GitHub Student Developer Pack is very free offering of developer tools that is limited to students, which is also includes the like cloud resources, programming tools, and the support that GitHub has access. So this one is their slogan, like what I said, the background is the white and the mark is the black. And the Linux also the very cute one. The Linux had the like penguins to show their website. And the Linux is the best known and the best used open source operating system. So why it's called the system? So I think it's very big platform for the people to share and use. So people can like there will be lots of people to go there and use that. And the Linux is the software that sits underneath all of the other software on a computer, receiving the request from those programs, and also relaying those requests to the computer's hardware. And I think Linux is a wide range of operations available to users, most available one, and it can increase the security. So the distributors can available to the end users, and the distributors are completely free to download. And for the security one, it's like the people can we know the hacker is very dangerous, and if there's hackers appear, so the security has the problems. But for the Linux, the hackers have contributed to the all-over security of the Linux, and by making the source available to anyone. Security experts can help to identify any main security flaws in the operating systems, so the hackers can't in turn, and therefore the whole platform is very security. And it's more difficult to find the apps to support your needs. So that's one of the disadvantage. Like it happens in the business one, I think. Like more programmers are developing apps that are supported by Linux. And many more applications are available for the working world compared to what was available for a decade ago. So the main issue, I think, is drivers. Before we can store any hardware component in our computer, we must make sure the hardware has the drivers available. And the hardware manufacturers usually write the drivers for the Windows, but not all brands write drivers for the Linux. This means some of your hardware might not be compatible. So that's not compatible with the Linux if you decide to switch or change something. And the other disadvantage I think is the support for open source. It can be the issue. There are plenty of Windows support people, but Linux is not supported out of the boxes, which means the way Linux distributes the companies can make money is through their support channels. The companies must pay fees for its support if they can't solve issues. However, there are plenty of the forums and the blogs that support Linux issues. If your company has a good Linux administrators, so the administrators can typically find answers through one of these free channels without paying for money. So this platforms is the kind of the Linux forms. And people share their code, they can communicate with each other, and that's very security. So I highly recommend to use this one because that's very common. And I also found another very exciting things, and I saw those are very cute. You can see this image. This topic I want to talk about the difference between the open source and the others. So this one is the open source mark, and this one is the closed source mark. So open source mark is the people seems to, you can see this one is the people, and seems to open their names, and lots of people can go there and share their data. And you can see the closed source. They are reverse. And these people seems, I don't want to share my own ideas to your guests. So I think when you saw this image, you can just know what's the difference. The open source is a free one, free to download, very accessible in public, and everyone can share their own ideas. But the closed one maybe is inclined to the private one. So I think I will just talk about the closed source, maybe original authors of the proprietary software can legally copy, inspect, and alter the software. And in order to use the property software, computer users must agree, make the permission. But if not, they will not do anything with the software that the software authors have not expressly permitted. This one is like the Microsoft and Adobe Photoshop. It's the proprietary software. So you might want to ask, what's the proprietary? I think the proprietary is maybe most the business one. Not everyone can use, and the business, because business have lots of secret stuff or something, they don't want to share the code, so you need to buy something, or they don't want to show publicly. And those people have the very serious mind. They think the data maybe need to have the owners. and also the they own the intellectual properties. Therefore, they just don't want to share their code, so that's the closed source. But for the open source one, it's very different. Authors can make its source code available to others who would like to view that code, copy it, learn from it, alter it, or share it. And if they use the proprietary software, like the closed source, users must accept the terms of a license. When they use open source software, but the legal terms of the open source one should not. So I think maybe the open source one is more helpful and more useful for the people to use, instead of just close their own source, no innovative, no creative, just think something about themselves. And this map I think is very interesting. The one source, it says the one source is a strategic asset, and the average is the 30%. But now it's the best in class is the 80%, which means it grows from the smaller part to the majority part. So lots of people know how many benefits they can get from the open source. So more and more users will use this open source, and lots of people will know this one. So you can see the lots of categories like banking, healthcare, automotive. They can use they will use lots of data in this one. I also know the information from my Asian business course. They have the Toyota companies, and I know the Toyota company, they have the very large. They are the very large company to produce the cars. So if they want to make the high quality with the normal price, they not only need the very fast process, but also need the plenty of the data, the codes to design each systems of the cars. So if the code is already there, you don't need to spend a lot of time to just create the new code. You can use the original one to put in your system and benefit your system. So that's the one reason why Toyota can produce the more products with the high quality, but with the very low price. And I also want to know why people prefer using the open source. So the first one coming into my mind is the control. They can examine the code to make sure which is not doing anything they don't want to do, and they can change the parts of it they don't like. Users who aren't programmers also benefit from the open source software because they can use the software for any purpose they wish, not just merely the way someone else thinks they should. And you can see this photo. This photo shows the Source Control Explorer. This one I just screenshot from the Java. And you can see, you can just open it and copy the code for yourself, or just put your new one with the open button. And the other stuff I think is the training one. The training one, why the open source needs the training? Because it helps them become better programmers. The open source code is publicly accessible, so the students can easily study as they learn to make better software. Students can also share their work online, inviting comments and critique as they develop their skills. Once the people discover the mistakes in programs' source code, they can share their mistakes with others to help them avoid making mistakes, the similar mistakes themselves. So it can push the students or push some other people to create the new stuff. So you can say the request increased a lot, which means also a lot of people will use this open source, this website a lot, this platform a lot. So for the security one, I think the security, if you use the open source, they will be more secure and stable than the proprietary software, because anyone can view and modify them. Someone might spot and correct the errors that the program's original authors might have missed. And because so many programmers can work on a piece of the open source software without asking for permission from original authors, they can fix, they can update, and upgrade the one-source software more quickly than they can proprietary software. So I think the security problems can be guaranteed. And you can see this photo. They have the network security, like the Fairworks VPN, the information security, vulnerable risk management, and the protocols like the Fairworks. So this one have the very personal experiences. For the security one, every summer I will choose the summer course online, but I will choose to take in China. But in China, lots of the American stuff like the Google Chrome, like the Ins, I can't open because maybe the different countries they have the security problems. The security systems to protect their own stuffs. So I need to use the VPN to get access to the open source, to get access to my apps. So I think it's increased a lot for the security, protect our information like this one. So I think that's why lots of business people also choose this one, because I think business have lots of secret stuffs, but they also choose the open source one. So I think this one is very secure. So that's why business people will choose them. And for the stability stuffs, I think many users prefer them because it's important and has the long-term projects. And the programmers can publicly distribute the source code for the open source software. They rely on the software for critical tasks, can be sure their tools won't disappear if their original creators stop working them. They can continue doing that. Additionally, some open source software tends to both incorporate and operate according to the open standards. So you can see these photos. I give you the entrepreneur stability. So that's why I show you the business examples. And the open source is very flexible. You can type anywhere, and you can log in and find the source anywhere, because the source is always there, because the code exists. So I think that's very helpful for people. So from the beginning of the open source, I just thought open source must be free, and the closed source must not be free. But right now I found I'm wrong. Open source software programs can charge money for the open source software they create or to which they contribute. But in some cases, because our open source license might require them to release their source code when they sell software to others. So some programmers find the charging users money for software services and the support is more expensive. So their software remains the fees of the charge. And they need to make money to helping others in stores. And yeah, that's the free charge. But free charge needs to depends on the some things. And this one is the open source license. I just know the open source license need to have the firstly, if you want to get the open source, you need to download and then open the license, and then you can just open. So there are 3 tabs: the GNU Public License, which we call the GPL, and the Free Software Foundation, FSF, and the Artistic License. So for the GPL, it also ensures the source code for any OSS, which will remain freely available. So it's also the free one. And the FSF is different from that. It can also promote and encourage the collaboration of the software developers worldwide. And for the artistic license one, open source can allow the source code to be distributed freely, but the charge only at the discretion of the original author. So how to use the open source license? At first, I come up with several steps. And you can also see this one, lots of processes. So I began to consider if that needs the very complex process. So I just tried myself. And I found we can just use the 6 steps. The first one, you just open your GitHub repository in a browser. And then in the root directory, click on the Create New Files. Then name the file's license, and click on Choose a license template. Finally, pick one of the licenses, and then choose it. Click on the Submit. So I think that's very easy and very short process for us. And then I really want to tell about the value things. The value things is the freedom, innovation, and integration. For the freedom one, we also tell some users use the freedom to use the software. They can run the software anywhere, and they are free to modify and adapt the software on their own specific requirements. And for the innovation one, people can collaborate with each other, show more new ideas, and bring up the software innovation at the speed, scale, and diversify one. So they can refine the current open source software, make the very new, creative, better, and more processed software solutions. And for the integration one, open source began as a distributed idea, and now it becomes the norm. It becomes the best option for the entrepreneurs seeking to keep up or ahead of their competition. So that's very valuable for people to install them. And from my personal understanding, I think I come up after I learned this chapter, I come up with several questions like some disadvantages I knew like the open source is free and public, and lots of innovations. People are so active to talk with each other, to share their data, and then maybe make more benefits. But I think is that fair, because everyone can access that, and there's for the original authors, whether they have the like knowledge property, and if there's a business secret, whether they share their codes or not. And maybe people download some like free code in the open source, and then they sell to some other companies just for themselves. So for them interest instead of benefiting others. So I think the open source also has some like disadvantages to like share their data, or maybe do something like if there's a lazy people, they don't want to think, and they just copy some codes and then use it for themselves instead of creating the new one. So whether the innovation stopped and no one wants to think the new ideas, or maybe do more stuffs online. So I just come up with these questions. So in my conclusion, I think open source is a very big platform for people to share their own data. They can modify them, correct the mistakes, which can push the innovation and also the communications through the maybe whole world. And because this is the technology era, so this one can also improve the technology growth so fast. And the technology and the people, they can become more interactive with each other. They can benefit each other and also save more time, become more efficient to benefit not only their life stuff, but also maybe the works areas. So I think that's very helpful and useful.